Welcome to Deal Shredders.
We are your hosts, David and Greg.
We are local Nashville investors, cash buyers, and real estate agents who love to analyze your deals.
In episode 2, we break down all the details of downzoning property with our buddy Eric Hensley. Tune in to hear more about this great land detail and all the fun quiet title issues he had. What's up, guys? Welcome to Deal Shredders Volume 2. David Morgan and
Greg Faricelli here with our good friend Eric Hensley.
Guys, thanks for tuning in. We appreciate it. If you tuned in last week, you know that we just sat around talking about the deals of 2019 that were some of our best. I talked about one specifically in East Nashville. Greg talked about a 1031 exchange that he did, so that was pretty sweet. Both really impactful in our businesses. We decided to bring in a good buddy, Eric Hensley, talk about some of the deals he's been doing. Most specifically this week, we're going to talk about the best deal of 2019. So my question, is there a specific one that kind of comes to mind?
There's one that I could talk about that was pretty good.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah?
How good was it?
It was $82,000.
All right. Okay.
That's pretty solid, man.
All right. And where in town was that? You can give as much information as you want. Or as
absolutely, yeah. So it was 510 Fisk.
Okay.
So it was just land. It was a commercial CS zone lot, and it was unbuildable at the time.
Okay, so unbuildable because
it was not on. It was something about an ulterior. It wasn't on a main ulterior, but it was a CS lot, so you could not build residential.
So it wasn't part of the adaptive residential?
Yeah, so it wasn't on the main arterial, so it couldn't be used as...
So it was like in a more of a residential area, commercially zoned.
Correct. So...
Okay.
So code says y'all can't do anything with it.
Yeah.
So, okay, before we go there, let's back up. How do you find the deal?
So a lot of my deals are from other people. So that is
from wholesalers and networking.
Either wholesalers, networking, other agents.
They just know that you bring them they bring you a deal, you can close, make it happen.
Correct. So they bring me a deal. My number one thing is I will not put something on a contract if I don't intend to close it. That's
Guys, did you hear that? If you're listening, you're a wholesaler. If you need buyers, you got to buy right here.
He's a closer.
Just think about that. Anyways, go on.
Yeah, so I don't want to put a deal under contract if I'm not 100% sure that I'm going to close it. So with this one in particular, it came from another wholesaler.
So it was another wholesaler. So another person actually had it under contract directly with the seller.
No. So what happened was they had already did their research and they couldn't do anything with the lot. They're like, "Hey Eric, I know you do land. Here you go. I don't want anything to do with it. Here's the seller. Here's everything." I paid him a couple of grand.
So they just basically passed off a warm lead to you, kind of.
So Correct. He was like a bird dog, kind
right.
of.
And he's like, "Hey, I don't have anything to do with this," and just passed me off the lead.
Cool. So at that point, you paid them, I guess, because you found out it was a deal. Because I'm assuming.
Yeah, I mean, I knew it was a deal before. I knew that I was going to be
one way or another. You're going to figure it out. Okay.
Yeah. So the wholesaler couldn't figure out what to do with it. He was the one. So why couldn't he? What was his hang up?
Because
just didn't have the knowledge.
You got to have a lot of understanding of zoning and codes. And can you change the lot? Can you not change the lot? What's the overlay? Is there a specific overlay? Is it in maintenance? Is it in evolving?
Yeah.
And then what he means by knowledge is he means a lot of patience because codes is a pain.
A lot of waking up early to stand in line at 7 a.m.
Correct.
Patience is code for,
All right.
So the gentleman was older, phenomenal guy, great guy. Actually, I'm buying another lot from the same seller as we speak, but went and sit down with him. And I offered him $70,000 for the lot in its current condition.
So back up a little bit. We got a CS zone lot. What was the dimensions of the lot?
It's 32 by 38.
So
it's a pretty small lot. So you can't do more than a single build on it, I'm assuming.
So
all right.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what most people think, right?
Right. So with the CS zoning, you couldn't. But if I downzoned it to MUL or MUN, then with the overlay, I could build with no setbacks.
Oh,
Except for there was a front 10-foot and a rear like 20
foot, right?
But I could build to the line because it was CS beside it and an alley on the other side.
So you had an alley, and what was on the other side?
A CS commercial lot.
So you didn't have the landscape buffer.
I didn't have anything.
So you had 5 foot from that lot.
No, I didn't have anything. Because
so you literally went to the property line.
Yeah.
So guys, if you're tuning in, you're understanding, or you don't understand, setbacks are basically what code says. Like, let's say that this line on the table, if you can see it as the property line, codes will say, hey, you can't build a house or a commercial piece of property so close regardless. So different types of zoning have different setback requirements. Residential, usually it's 5 foot, sometimes it's 10. Commercial can be all sorts of things. Sometimes it can be really restrictive, but sometimes it can be really in your favor. In this situation, you literally had no buffer, so it's like all the way up to the property line you could build something, which what that means is his building envelope is significantly larger than a normal lot.
Right.
Yeah, because even on a collector's street, sometimes there's 50.
Yeah.
Yep. And so, so I do what I normally do. I have an engineer that I work with quite a bit, and I called him and I said, hey, here's what I have. What can I do with it?
So did that engineer help you figure out what you can do as far as zoning, policy, and all that stuff
100%. Yeah.
Okay, so that's
So he's
where the
helping you
okay,
concept plan and all that kind of stuff.
got it.
That's right.
So that's not something as a developer or an agent or a wholesaler that you would really know without the knowledge of an engineer.
So
You can learn it.
You can learn it, but no. So if you're going to mess with raw land, I would say the number one person you want on your team is an engineer that will pick up the phone.
Okay, so here's a question for that. So what is the cost of an engineer to do something like that? I know it's a small lot, but
So start to finish, I paid $4,800.
Does that include your survey and your site plan and everything?
And the rezone, the down zone.
Due diligence.
Okay, so the rezone, half of the $2,200 for the rezone right there.
Correct.
So you only spent like what, $3,000 or something to figure that out?
Right. And
That's a hell of a $3,000.
Yeah. So we did. It was good. So we talked to them quite a bit about making sure that we understood what was going on, and it worked really well. So the biggest thing with the rezone though is I've done quite a few rezones,
Sure.
but I've always changed the zoning. I've never downgraded something.
Yeah, you've always probably tried to increase density.
Correct. I've never went from commercial to residential.
So is that different, or are they more favorable?
It was much more favorable. It went like I didn't even have to show up. They just
Really?
approved first reading, approved second reading. Everything was good. Third reading, done. So that took about 3.5 months.
Which is really quick.
It was really
for
quick.
a rezone.
Yeah. Not only that, but I got in the contract. I required the rezone to close.
Contingent upon approval.
Correct.
All right, so back up a little bit there. So we got a civil engineer. We knew we had something there. You got it locked up with the seller. Now tell us about more about the contingencies. Now, and do you use your own forms or?
Yeah, so I use a 2-pay contract. It is the contract that I had my attorney put together that works best for me.
Sure.
It also is favorable to having contingencies specifically for land.
So you had a specific rezone on there to a certain zoning code by a certain time, more or less?
No. So what I did is I blanketed it. I just said, if it gets rezoned, it doesn't matter the time, then I'll close 30 days after that rezone.
Okay, so you made it really open-ended for you, and the seller already had rapport with you.
Right.
You're the best person for this lot because you're doing the most due diligence. You know the most about it. So if he's going to get the most money, it's going to be from someone like you.
And I told him if I did not do it, I would give him all of my due diligence materials that I did for free.
And he can pass it on and do whatever he wants with it.
And I showed him my check that I wrote to the engineer. I showed him, I made sure he understood,
I'm spending money.
I'm spending money.
And then also on the contract, did you put any earnest money deposit down?
So I put $500.
Okay, so is that refundable? I'm assuming that's refundable?
Nope, I gave it to him. So I said, hey, this is what we're doing. This is how we're doing it.
So you just gave it to him for his time and efforts. I mean, a lot of people don't do that.
Yeah. And it was $500. I wasn't, it wasn't that.
Not worried about it.
That big a deal.
Sure.
So everything was going good. I started kind of talking to people. Hey, what would this be worth to you? What would that be worth to you? put a concept plan together, and come to find out we could put 4
units.
4 units.
All right, so tell us a little bit. You said it was 32, was it?
It's like 32 by like 132.
So how do you fit 4 on that?
So there was, now I may be saying it wrong, but there's a floor to air ratio on MUN zoning. So we had to take that, and as long as it meets that requirement, you could put as many as that allows.
Okay, so it was MUN was your zoning.
MUNA.
MUNA. Now, so a lot of people what does that A actually stand for? Like you see R6A and MUNA, MULA.
To my understanding, I'm not 100% sure, but to my understanding, it's a community character that it has to meet certain characteristics of the other properties in the neighborhood.
So A could really mean anything.
Right.
It could mean setbacks. It could mean like any kind of architectural or anything. So it just depends on that actual policy.
Correct.
And neighborhood.
And then it was the overlay. So the zoning and then the overlay was also extremely favorable to development.
And what was the overlay?
I believe it was UZO.
Oh yeah, because you're right by.
Yeah.
Yep, within a
So
mile.
it was extremely.
So what about, okay, so back to the site plan. You got 4 on there. Now,
Yep.
what was the parking like with those 4?
There wasn't any. It was hardly. It was
Okay, so
all in house. So we did 2-car garage concept plan underneath. It was, the ideal situation here would be to build 4 smaller units. It would have been MUN, so it would have been Airbnb, non-owner occupied eligible. And the ideal person for this lot would be someone who wants to build it and keep it.
Got it. So back to the parking.
Yep.
Did you have 2 facing street and 2 facing alley?
We didn't have a parking requirement on because of the overlay.
So
we
how
only
did you
had
do it?
One per house that we had to equate for, and we put it in the house. We put it in the garage.
Single car garage.
Yep.
Gotcha. Okay, so you got all the
I
way
think it
to
was
the
either 1 or 1.5. We didn't have to equate for very much.
I think it's usually with like 2-bedroom units, it's required for like 1.5, and then once you go up to a 3-bedroom unit, then it gets to a requirement of 2.
Yeah,
I believe
right.
in
I
MUN
think
and
that's-
MUL.
It was,
Pretty basic.
yeah, it was very basic. So, but we did a very basic site plan. Like, we didn't do anything crazy. And then I started talking to a couple of people, and actually Parker McCracken brought the buyer for the deal.
So so basically the buyer, as in what did he buy? Did he buy the developed land without the structures?
Nope, he bought the rezoned,
Parcel.
fully approved parcel.
So he bought it ready to pull permits, basically.
Correct.
So you pretty much closed, filed paperwork, and finalized all that stuff, and then sold to the guy.
Yeah, so I did a double close. So I closed, and then the next buyer closed on theirs.
Okay, so back to that. A double close. Just so you know, double close is like when one person closes and another person doesn't. A lot of times, the first person who closes doesn't have the funds.
Right.
Either they don't have the funds or they didn't put the financing together for that. So did you use transactional funding?
100%. Yes, I did.
Okay, so what does that look like?
Yeah, so I use transactional funding. So I have a private lender who's one of my best friends that's lended to me for years. And I called him up and said, hey, I just need you to sit the $70,000 to the title company for 24 hours, and I'll give you $2,000.
Okay, so
that's what I did.
So they wire the funds from their bank account to Rudy Title, and a day later they get their funds back with $2,000 income.
Correct.
Okay, and then the end buyer,
Yep.
who you did the double close with,
Yep.
brought the rest of the funds, the contract price.
Correct. Which was $160.
So you didn't assign the contract; you did a
did.
double close.
Correct.
Now, is there a certain reason or guidelines you use to do a double close?
Yes and no. So the double close reasoning was because if for some reason the end guy didn't close, I still wanted the lot. I still wanted to do the deal. I was still going to probably build it myself.
Sure.
So I knew without a doubt, like, I was going to close it. The other thing is I wanted to make sure the seller knew, like, I'm closing.
Right.
I'm not throwing it off to somebody else or anything like that.
Right.
I'm closing it. And so that was important to me.
Yeah. So a lot of back to that. A lot of times, people come to the sellers and they don't know if they're going to get their funds.
Correct.
So he's guaranteeing with the seller making good, like, hey, I really want this, whether it's this way or another way. I'm going to get it closed. You're going to get paid, and then I'll figure it out.
That's right.
So your worst case scenario, were you going to refinance out of that 70 grand, or were you just going to keep him on the deal?
So I had already made that understanding that if for some reason this falls through, then our backup plan, we had already agreed upon terms for the backup. I was going to keep it.
Okay.
And redo them.
And what do the terms like that look like? Anything
So
negotiated, or is there anything set standard, or what?
So mine I usually try and do between 10 and 15%, no points. So that's
And you offer that, or do they tell you that?
so I offer it. So how I've been getting better and better money, but how I normally do it is just making sure that they understand, like, I want you to make money. If this is a win-win situation, we're going to continue to do business for a very long time. And so what are you comfortable with? Right now you're getting 5% in the market. What if I double that for you? Does that sound like something you would do?
And some people I've noticed, they don't want big lump sums.
No.
Because they have to pay taxes on it, they have to claim it. So to hold the note and they get paid at the end makes a lot more sense to some people.
Correct. Yeah. So a tidbit with this one. So this actually too, I had to do a quiet title.
Okay, so
On top of
what is a quiet title?
So the grandfather, like back in like 1940, and the grandmother had split. Grandmother went in with another gentleman, and he was on title. Other gentleman had no heirs. They couldn't find anybody, but the grandson, who was the owner, had been paying the taxes for the last 15 years on this property.
Okay, so they come into play.
Correct.
So
when we went to buy it, they had to track down the other party, and they've come to find out there were no living heirs. There was nobody left. They couldn't find anything about them, so that's when the quiet title had to come up.
got it. So more or less a quiet title is there's probably somebody on it, somebody's paying taxes, but it gives the courts time for anybody to come speak up, to get on title, to get their equity or whatever it is out of it.
That's right.
And if nobody says anything in that time, then you can actually get your clear title. And then were you able to get title insurance with that?
So that is what I required. So I would not do a deal without title insurance, and that was part of it. They couldn't give a clear title. Now, sometimes doing the going ahead and closing and then clearing title makes sense. In this case, it did not.
Got it. So is having the clear title, so you're going to wholesale it anyway, you're going to sell it, so you don't really care about the title. But what people don't understand is if you don't get clear title on the front, you can't sell that. It's not financeable for the end buyer. So once he builds a house, nobody can buy it.
So I could have closed, built the house, and kept it for life, right?
And don't care about the title.
And don't care about it. However, my goal was not to do that. My goal was to sell it.
Now, here's a good question. If you were to keep it for life without clear title, can you pull equity and refinance out?
Very unlikely.
Right.
Yeah,
so you
getting any kind of money on a property. I mean, this goes into a whole different thing. But when you borrow money against a property, you're using that property as collateral. A lender always requires that there's two forms of title insurance. There's the lender's title policy, which insures the amount of money they've lent against the property, and there's the owner's policy, which is the title insurance policy that's against the value of the property, which is a lot of times more than what's being borrowed against it. So if you don't have clear title, then no lender is going to ever give you money because you can't give a warranty deed with title insurance to them. So the only way you'd be able to build on that would be cash, and you do it yourself.
Right, and that's one thing you need to tell your title company, because if you have it under contract for a certain amount and there's an assignment fee on it, you want the title insurance to be for the full amount, including the assignment fee.
That's right. That's right.
All right, so look, you got it for $70. How long did it take to get to sell it?
So it took 7 months.
7 months, and you sold it for
$160.
$160. So you made.
So I paid a 3% fee to Parker for bringing me the buyer.
Okay. Out of the 170.
Out of the 160.
160.
And then I also paid all the closing costs for the other side. So I ended up making I think I was like 81.5.
So you made 81.5 profit.
Yeah.
Sounds like a
How
pretty
long
good...
did you end up owning the property for? Like
24 hours.
So you bought it. The rezone had already taken place, right? Like the
Correct.
rezone finished.
So
Once you got
our final
approval,
contract was actually contingent on
Right.
the final.
So the
rezone.
seller held the property while you added the equity to it.
yes.
Correct.
Now, why would a seller want to keep a property? Why wouldn't they want to just give it to you, get paid, and then move on?
So I offered that at a much reduced price.
Yeah, because there's more risk.
Correct.
Yeah.
And they wanted their number.
So they were able to wait 7 months and get X amount more.
Right.
Correct.
Well, in that
And
situation,
you did all the work.
Correct.
I'm assuming in that situation, you're like, hey, I'll buy it from you, but if you just want to give it to me right now, it's probably going to be 25, 30, 40 grand versus, hey,
Yeah, right. I offered 40.
Yeah, so, hey, you can get 40 now, or you can wait until I get this done, and if it happens, you'll get 70. If you're willing to wait an extra 3, 4, 5, 6, however many months, you'll get an extra 30 grand. If you're not doing anything with the property,
Well, not only that, but they couldn't sell it.
Right.
So without me clearing the title, they weren't going to be able to do
Yes.
anything with
So not only could it be rezoned to add value, you had to clear the title, you had to do all kinds, you had to...
And the title clearing cost me $5,000.
Right.
So in total, I spent about $9,000 before I even.
Yeah, so you're in it for
Yeah.
80, and then you sell it for 160. You back out your expenses. And all.
So who did the clearing of the title?
So Tressler Title, Todd Tressler,
And that's who
cleared the title.
closed the transaction also?
Mm-hmm.
So your closing attorney can do that?
They can. Yeah. But just be very careful on who you're using. The guys that I used were very professional. They kept me updated, and here's what's going on, here's what's happening, here's how it's working through, and every step of the way I got updated on what was going on.
Right, because you don't want to get too far into spending your money on engineering and due diligence if the title may not be clear. So you
That's
have
right.
to kind of piece it all together. It's like, okay, I'm 50% done with my title. I'm feeling pretty good. I can make this next move now instead of just like throwing all your money into it, and then at the end you have a rezone property with no title.
That's
yeah.
right.
I was just talking with a guy about this yesterday or the day before, wholesaler in town. He was telling me that he will get properties under contract and then he'll market them and then he'll figure out title issues once he's found out a buyer. And I was like, hey man, that's the exact opposite way, because if you do that, then if you find out you have title issues, you've upset a buyer and you've wasted your time and effort. I was
And
like,
their time. And
yeah,
effort.
like get the property under contract, check title, make sure everything's cleared up, and if you need to renegotiate, then you do it then.
Right.
And then you find a buyer, because title issues will kill deals all day long and twice on Sunday. It's like, if you don't deal with that now, there's no way we're going to, even if you find a buyer later, you've just burnt that bridge.
I agree.
Cool. Well, awesome, man. Thanks for that information and telling us about how that deal went down. I'm sure hopefully people learned. Does anybody have any questions out there? Where are we at with questions? I can't really scroll through to see what's going, if anybody has a question.
Someone wants to know, did Eric close and then rezone?
Yes.
No.
No, wait. No, yeah. Sorry.
So the question is, Eric, did you close first and then do the rezone?
No.
So yeah, rezone was, yeah, because the contract was contingent upon
The
it.
contract was contingent on the rezone.
Rezone happens and then closed, took title, and then sold to the next buyer.
Correct.
And someone would also like to know, how much did you pay to complete the quiet title?
So how much did you pay?
$5,000.
$5,000 to
Yeah,
complete
so
the quiet
It
title.
was $2,500 up front and then $2,500 at the end.
That's
Basically a retainer to get started. And then,
yeah. Get
That's
some,
right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there was no guarantee
Yeah.
that it was going to happen. So I was now in this house with the rezone and everything.
Probably $7-8 grand at that point.
I was in $7,500 at that point.
Had you already spent some of the money on the engineering and then found out the quiet title,
So I had already completely rezoned the property,
and then found, oh, by the way.
and then found, oh, by the way,
Okay.
So that's a little fun
No,
phone
why?
call.
Yeah.
Why did it take so long for them to discover you had title issues?
because nobody, we had a quit claim deed, okay, from a will, and the quit claim deed from the will through probate gave full ownership to the person,
That
you're
one
buying from.
person.
the one person that I was buying from.
Right.
So it was, it's questionable. So as they're going through clearing title, it took a long time for them to be like,
Hey, by the way, buddy.
hey, by the way, this quit claim is not valid. And not only is it not valid, this
Yeah.
secondary owner way back in the 1950s has ownership rights.
So who issued the quiet title, or who issued the quitclaim deed?
I don't know.
So is it most likely an attorney or somebody, right?
Correct.
So could you go back to that attorney and say, "Hey, look,
You can try. We did that on a
I
deal.
haven't, but
We did that on a deal last.
I mean, there's damages with 5,000 in
year.
damages to get a quiet title."
Yeah, but at that point, you're trying to track down, an attorney that's maybe still in practice or maybe not. Like, we had a deal like that where we had title issues, and our title company wouldn't mess with it. But we were able to track down the original title company that made an issue, and they were actually still in business. And so we went back to them, and they squared it up and said, "Hey, we'll issue title insurance, and we'll."
So they insured it.
They insured it, and they took it on because they're like, "Yeah, that was a clerical issue on our part, but we're good, and we'll take care of that." We rehabbed the house, got all that stuff done, and then moved forward.
So the will clearly stated, that it went to this gentleman.
Right.
But the thing is they didn't have the right to do it, and nobody knew it.
Yeah. But at that point, it happened, and it'd probably been 5, 10, 15, 20 years or whatever, and then it's like, oh, by the way.
35.
Yeah,
Oh.
so then at that point, time's passed, people passed on, whatever's happened, and it's like, oh, crap, what we did was completely wrong, but nobody knew it.
Not only that, but the two people that owned it were not married,
Oof.
right? And the gentleman had no kids.
Oh,
So, we had to track everything down.
Yeah, yeah.
It was
that
fun.
is nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it ended up being a great deal.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and had you done anything like this, or was it like you knew that you could make it happen, and you were just learning kind of along the way, or?
So, I'm
Because
a little...
that's a lot of stuff. Like, you dealt with a down zone, you dealt with an unbuildable lot, and you dealt with a quiet title, and then you still made like a hefty $80,000. How many pieces of that puzzle had you actually done before where you're like, oh, I can take care of this, but these I got to call,
None.
Okay. So you're just like rolling the dice here. Let's see what happens.
I mean, that's how you do it.
Yeah, so I'm a little bit different. Like I figure that within reason, it's going to cost me $5,000, right? But I'm going to know how to do everything, what went wrong, how to change it. I had split some lots before, and I have increased zoning before, but I had never downgraded,
right?
And I have never dealt with a quiet title issue. And then, but I mean, it's a phenomenal experience.
Yeah, you learn a ton.
To go
And
through it.
if something pops up like that in the future, you're like, cool, bring it on. It's just
Right.
another day in the office.
I mean, that's what you do. You paid $5,000 for your education, the worst case scenario, but then you got paid $80,000 to learn it.
That's right.
Okay. Cool.
All right, any more questions over there? Looks like we're good, guys. So we're at episode 2 Deal Shredders. Mr. Eric Hensley, who is a buyer in Nashville area, Clarksville area, and he closes. So
Yeah.
I guess I'm going to have Colleen come hit end live video, and we are done.
See you guys later.
Y'all have a wonderful day.